let's get started here. Oh, golly. Want to just, I'll read our opening prayer, and then David, if you would kindly read what you brought for us today. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. You have sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves in things of Torah. Amen.
Amen.
So, David, you're on.
Well, thank you. Today's quotation is from John Milton from Paradise Lost. The imperial ensign, which full high advance, show like a meteor, streaming to the wind like we saw last week.
Yes.
And with gems and golden luster, rich and blazed, Sephardic arms and trophies, should like a meteor, streaming to the wind. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, at one time, comets and meteors were considered omens.
Yes, they were, but they're
That's
not
right.
anymore. But we've still celebrated their beauty, like I did just a few days ago.
Sometimes it's wonderful. You know, they come in assorted colors.
Yeah, they do.
They do. That tells you their mineral composition. Okay. Anyway, why don't we get started? Rabbi Miri, I'm glad you're here because I'm going to have a slew of questions to ask later. And they're not great questions. The answers will be interesting, though. We are currently on Exodus 31, verse 1.
Oh, I missed a week, I guess.
Yes, Don.
Marty, could I take us back to the verse of chapter 30 last week? Because I always review what we discuss, and it suddenly hit me one verse, which I thought was startling after I read it again.
Okay, why don't you read it?
Okay, it's verse 15, and it's about contributing shekels by the people.
Yes.
Verse 15, the rich shall not give more, and the poor shall not give less than half a shekel. And when they give an offering unto the Lord, when they give an offering unto the Lord to make an atonement for your souls. And it suddenly struck me that we have basically a clean sheet Judaism here. It's, government, priesthood, everything is being put together at this point in time. And this is the first mention that there's a distinction between rich and poor. So this seemed to me, this was an opportunity for egalitarianism among the Hebrews. And yet we start right off the bat with the separation of the rich and the poor, which I found is kind of skipped through it, but I found that quite startling.
What's more, Don, what is, you're leaving something out. They shall all pay the same.
Exactly. They're making them equal. They're making the rich and the poor be equal.
Yeah.
No,
it doesn't matter who you are.
That's not my point.
That's not the question.
My point was that there is a distinction here between rich and poor, and the chance to level the economic brackets was just ignored. And so there is a rich, from this point on, there's a rich and a poor.
Yeah.
And I thought, we just kind of blew through that, and I understand why, because but when I went back, I thought, whoa, I need to call attention to this. So thank you very much, and onward.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I understand, Don, what you're saying. We see here all of a sudden that there is a separation between rich and poor, that in the people, these two concepts exist, while, they just came out of Egypt, and they are just, how already they know that they are rich and poor. Is that the question?
Yes, it's just this
Well,
ragtag bunch of Hebrews out in the desert. How did some get rich and some get poor so soon? And why did it stay that way for all this?
well, yeah, yeah. Well, Larry?
Okay, an interesting aspect of this. My wife indexed the book 10,000 Years of Inequality. And originally we thought that going from hunter-gatherers to the agricultural, that then ownership of land and crops created the disparities. But this showed that hunter-gatherers also had a division. They were wealthier. And the way they studied this is by grave goods, what you are buried with. Because
Yes.
there were not too many other foods available going back to studying.
Right.
But I think that Don talks about the Torah. Am I right, Don?
Yes, that's correct, Rabbi.
Well, I'm going to say something that, and this is the way that I view the Torah. The Torah for me is it's a teaching thing. It's a teaching book. And it's not a history in which, in a history, you could claim that things are sequential. So here they are, in the desert. How do we know that already they are poor and rich? It's not about the gathering and the hunters that we talk about. It's a difficult question to understand unless you look at the Torah with different eyes, Don. That it's not history and it's not sequential. So we can say that these laws were established much later as they were given, and it's not sequential. They left Egypt, they are in the desert, and now they know that they have rich and poor. At the same time, I would say that if you remember Jacob and Esau and Lot, they mentioned that these people are very rich. You should marry them. They have a lot of stuff. And we know that Jacob had accumulated a lot of stuff. And so when I say stuff, is cows and mules and animals, but also gold and silver. And the same with Esau. So they had the notion, even in the story, as I call it, the mythology. Even at that time, it was a concept that existed when the Torah has been told. And the law of how to do this, it's much later when the rules are happening. Although the rabbinical world says there is no first and second, there is no early and late in the Torah. So you can have things that are going to happen in 2000 years. No, well, when they come to Canaan, all of a sudden appear in here. I don't know if I answer your question, but it's a difficult one, really. It's about how you perceive the Torah.
Well, that helps a lot, Rabbi. But it also implies that the notion of private property underlies all of this, that individuals can own and be protected from losing their private property, and it's never stated out loud. And I was fascinated by the fact that Israel, the Organization of Israel, was founded on a kibbutz, which is not private property, it's communal property. And
yeah,
that hasn't done very well in the years since. Capitalism has sort of taken over, but I mean, we're going back. I just found this fascinating that this long ago, that the notion of private property in the Torah was so.
Yeah, and what's interesting, in the future, we don't talk about individual property, as you are pointing out. How do we have that? But it was tribal property. how much land you get or how much animals you have as tribal, as a kibbutz, and each one gets what the tribe has. And you belong to a rich tribe or you belong to that.
I
Yeah,
just
there are
wanted
tribal.
to
Bless you.
add something that
Go ahead,
many,
Martin.
it's okay.
Bless you, everyone.
Yes, God bless you and be well. I wanted to add something to what Don is discussing here. There are many, many factors. One of which, if you look at history, or even the way it is mentioned in the Bible, city and city-states arose where there were water sources. At that time, water equaled wealth. Now think of where people lived and what people had to pay for in order to use that water. In the stories in Torah, we are confronted with issues of men's superiority over women, okay? And bullying women, pushing them around for the obvious implications of that. But it implies that this goes way, way back. Your Syrians, as you mentioned in Rabbi Miriam, the story of Lot, he wants to go a different way from Abraham. He wants to go towards the wealth that was there, and Abraham says, no, that's not what I'm here for. Laban, from the same family, okay, is considered a very wealthy person, and that's counted in his number of sheep and number of wives as symbols of wealth. With the Egyptians specifically, it's that plus food source. Every one of these cities was near a water source. And some of them were interesting. They were not on a river, but also a river and a seagoing port. Okay, and as we get into the different stories in the liturgy, many of these cities that we speak of were on these rivers or ports. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. And that's why there's a separation in the wealth of the populace. If you borrowed from somebody who is wealthy, you got in Egypt before your journey, you wound up keeping that and you had more. That's all I can say. It's a great source of wealth. Yes. Yes, Ricky.
You're muted.
Ricky, yes.
Sorry, I had a phone call. That's still true. I've heard statistics, and I think it's 50% of the population of the United States lives within 50% of the two oceans. We will always want to get
That's
to
right.
the water. Yeah.
At least 50%. And if you think about
I think that number was bigger than 50 miles, I remember.
yes, but it's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. And so there are a lot of benefits that food and water provide, and one of those benefits is wealth, whether we like it or not. Yes, Larry, and then Don.
And there's always been the aspiration of wealth,
Yes,
and then the connotation, those that are wealthy know more. And we can go back to our Fiddler on the Roof.
you
If
got
I
it.
were a rich man.
That's right. Excellent, excellent. Yes, Don, please.
Following your line of thought, Marty, yeah, water and food are the primary resources, but that's not the same as who controls them. That's the issue I'm getting at. It's like, yeah, they're the important things, but what about ownership? You know, and who protects that ownership and who controls it? That's what
we are going to see as we go through the remainder of Torah, we will point out, you'll be able to see the egalitarian approach to that, to living within the Israelite community. Okay, but it still recognizes that there is a difference among people when it comes to some people are more, they have more ingenuity. There are some people who have more drive than others. And so it recognizes all of that. But overall, it's a very egalitarian text.
I think that Don, and correct me, Don, he talks about the individuals, that every individual is either poor or rich. And I understand your question because it makes sense. The issue of water, Marty, is something that works for the tribe, for all the people. If there is water where the tribe is, they flourish. Or if they are in the desert, and we're going to see that. We're going to see, like, there are two tribes that ask Moshe to sit on the other side as well of the Jordan because it's good earth there. The Jordan is providing. So the only thing I could suggest, Don, would be, let's say that you belong to the tribe of Judah, that's a richer tribe, then you are rich. I don't know, but I think it's a very good question that comes up about the individuals as they own something, property, gold, or whatever. There is a rich and the poor. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. That's a new concept. Unless we go to Genesis and we see Jacob and Esau and Laban and all these chevre. So it was a concept. Let's put it that way. It was a concept that there is a rich and that there is a poor. And I understand your question because usually we talk about a group of people being rich or poor, having water or not having water, and so forth. Am I right with your question?
Yeah, thanks, Rabbi Mary. And I am such an expert on this discussion. We're supposed to be in chapter 31, and I'm still got us bogged down.
Okay, no,
it's important
okay.
because the same question is going to come up multiple times. Times.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what do we learn about who owns the land? That was part of your question. Yes, David.
I just wanted to notice, going back to the verse 15, as to support Rabbi Miri's concept that the Bible, the Torah, is egalitarian, because it specifically says that if you're rich, you will not give any more, but if you're poor, you will not give any less. And it came up with something that everybody, with hopefully everyone, could live with. And so I think Rabbi Miri is very, very correct on that point.
Except that there's still, it accepts the rich and the poor. That's my point, is that there's the fact that there will be. Are you familiar with the Pareto principle, power law? It's
The what principle?
the Pareto power law. Vilfredo Pareto, an Italian economist back in the beginning of the 20th century, came up with this. And it basically, we call it sometimes the 80-20 rule, but it basically says that there's a distribution of whether it's wealth or whatever, such that without any intervention, 50% of the wealth will be owned by 80% of the wealth will be owned by 20% of the people. And 5%, this is a significant, 5% of the wealth will be owned by half the people. So in any given situation, if you have $1 zillion, 5% of the people will own, or sorry, half the people own only 5% of that $1 zillion. And it always applies. So unless there's intervention, it's automatic distribution of wealth. And so what I'm looking for is some in the Torah that it's recognized that the wealth will be unequal, and it needs
Even Jubilee years.
yeah.
But also, 80-20 rule applies to work. I mean, in any organization.
Yeah,
Every
20%
distribution.
of the people do 80%
everything.
of the work.
That's right.
You know, so the 80-20 rule is almost like the
Universal.
golden, like the Greeks have the golden ratios.
Now,
So
look at your grocery bill. 20% of the items will account for 80% of what you spend.
yeah, I'm sure.
Just the way it works.
Yeah.
I don't.
So it's all around us. It's always been there. If I'm a hunter gatherer and I have an armload of berries, there are going to be people who are going to say the same thing. Who's he to have all those berries? Okay, but I did the work. I deserve to have the berries, and that argument has persisted to this very day.
Except
And-
Ecclesiastes.
You can't. I mean, that's something that's part of human nature. So the Torah is recognizing it, but I strongly believe that the Torah is recognizing the difference, but showing us ways that we can balance the scales so they're more even. Do they ever reach that level? Yeah, when nothing is on the scales.
Mhm.
That's the only time those scales are balanced. And
Well,
so that's why I think that what we want to do is recognize the differences, but later on, we're going to see that the wealthy are expected to do more to support things than in the way of sacrifice as opposed to the poor. And so there are ways of trying to balance that out, John. It's not 100%, but this is a situation that has existed since man began on the planet, even before man. Animals behave the same way.
Well, Ecclesiastes tells us that the race is not always, the swift is not. are not
That's
always
right. That's
free.
right. That's why we take care of the women and the widows and the poor for the same reason.
All right. I'm turning off my mic.
Okay. Anyway, let's get started now with Exodus 31, verse 1.
Would you like me to do the first reading?
Sure, please.
Okay. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe le'emor, and the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, in wisdom and in understanding and in knowledge and in all manner of workmanship, to devise skillful works, to work in gold and in silver and in brass, and in cutting of stones for setting, and in carving of wood, to work in all manner of workmanship. And I, behold, I have appointed with him Oholiab, the son of Ahishmach, of the tribe of Dan. And in the hearts of all that are wise-hearted, I have put wisdom, so that they may make all that I have commanded thee. The tent of meeting, and the ark of the testimony, and the ark cover that is thereupon, and all the furniture of the tent, and the table and its vessels, and the pure candlestick with all its vessels, and the altar of incense, and the altar of burnt offering with all of its vessels, and the laver and its base, and the plated garments and the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons to minister in the priest's office, and the anointing oil, and the incense of sweet spices for the holy place, according to all that I have commanded thee, of all I have commanded thee, shall they do.
Okay. Uh, It's Old English, but it is an important statement. We're repeating a lot of things. Let's start with the beginning and go through it little by little. Bezalel it is mentioned. This is the third time in our reading. And we're still going to hear that name again and again. And so craftsmanship is very important.
BEZA.
Why is craftsmanship so important?
I think it's important because it defines people who are good with their hands and good with their brains, because it's not just taking wood and building a fence or building an observatory or building a house. It is the same person who will design that, who will engineer it. And so I think God is talking about giving people brains and asking us to use them.
I was getting after that. It is a very important thing. There's one thing also that separates humans from other animals, and that is imagination. We can reach far into the future with our imagination. We can also see into the past and come up with many ideas as to how things came about, and then trying to set ways that we can prove those ideas. So imagination is probably a very, very crucial force that we have been given. It has led to many inventions, and mankind has always moved forward, good or bad, all right? Because we never know whether an invention will be used totally for good, or it will also be used for bad. And so, but overall, societies have advanced because of this invention, and imagination is behind it. There is something though that is also akin to imagination. Okay.
Creativity.
Creativity is another word that we use. That very good. Creativity is another word that we use. The actual design, some of it is dictated, but the rest is being left up to the craftsmanship. And so these become very important factors. And because it's mentioned so many times in Torah, it must be very important. Yes, Don.
Another important use of craftsmanship is weapons technology. Even in those days, the invention of superior weapons was important. And I think it was the Kenites who were the metallurgists all the way going. Cain, who were the experts in that.
So, we discussed this years ago. That's right. That's excellent, Don. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Now, and I would say, I mean, you are the technical person, and those kind of things speak to you. I'm being an artist. I would say that the aesthetics of those things are very important.
Yes.
How does it look? So it has to be crafted and to look good. You cannot just stick it and that. The requirement is to be beautiful as well. But what I want to point to you, Don, is that there is knowledge that Uri ben Betzalel, or Betzalel, no, sorry, Betzalel ben Uri, Betzalel the son of Uri, is this craftsman that the soul, the sense of God is in him and is very bright. So here you have an individual that is separated from the rest of the group because of qualifications, not because he has more money or less money, but in this case, he has the capacity to do that. So we have here a tension between the community and the individual, and it's across all the Torah. And in English is the problem, because when you say you, is it Yal or is it you personally? In Hebrew, that's very clear. Ata, atem. So whenever it says plural, it's plural. You see, for example, in the Shema, Shema is individual. And there you shall hear personally. And then later on in the Shema, it talks about the community. So there is a tension between two of them as far as what we as people should pay attention to. It's not always the community. You're going to see the next sentence is a community, is the tribe of Dan. In the first one, is just Betzalel.
Just in my defense, Rabbi, I will mention I have a Master of Fine Arts student, so I'm not totally insensitive to the aesthetics of the situation. So.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Larry.
As we think of creativity and aesthetics, we are about to celebrate Hanukkah and we use a menorah. I have seen hundreds of different menorahs. Why don't we have just a simple way of holding candles with a shaman? Why are there so many varieties, and some of us collect all different? They are pieces of art. They add an extra meaning to the holiday.
Yes. And every person sees something different from that standpoint. Why does some people like a horizontal line? Why does some people like a vertical line? I don't know. And there's some like it's slanted. I have no idea why, but it is all part of the artistic ability that each of us have been given. But it's important here. It's been given by God. It's not that yes, this is in the days before the understanding of DNA and like that, but it is given to us by God. What we make of it may be what is considered choice. Okay. And then we can either abandon it, do something else, or we can stay with it. And we can do that constantly in our lives. So I think that, yes, Grace.
I just wanted to mention something about the menorah. I bought my almost 9-year-old grandchild his first Menoji. So it's talk about the creativity. When I went shopping online, because I make my menorah differently, like we mentioned, I've had a couple of different ones that I created myself. I've seen some amazing artwork around it. And this year I found, it's that, what emojis are when we text and these little feelings and happiness or sad or whatever. And so I found one online, it's battery operated, and I ordered it for him. And so they're waiting to open it. You know, his grandmother, his grandfather, his aunt, they were all Jewish, and so they're being raised in a new society, and he's so wonderful and bright, and I just love this kid to death. So I'm excited for them. So whenever they open it, and so I wanted to share that with you. It was very creative, very cute. You know, it's got just something I'd never seen before. It's just I'd never seen before. So hopefully I'll get some pictures sent to me and I can share them with y'all someday. I can't wait.
Thank you for
And that
all
was
of
cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Rabbi Mary.
I'm going to say this only once. If you go back to the menorah in the temple that they are building, in the million, how many branches it has it?
6 plus 1.
That's right.
9.
Exactly. We have only 6 plus 1. That's the
Oh, that's
menorah
right. The original.
that's going to
Yeah.
be in the temple. And that's the one that the Romans stole. Now, the Chanukiah has
Yes, I stand corrected.
how many branches?
8 plus 1.
8 plus 1.
8 plus 1.
Yes,
Now, why does it have 8 and not 6?
Because of the 8 days.
8 days. Yeah.
8 days, exactly, Ricky.
Yeah.
That celebrates the 8 days. It does not celebrate the menorah that was in the temple.
Right.
So we call it, in Hebrew, we call it Chanukiah, or
Yeah.
the same Chanukah, Chanukiah. But
Yeah.
anyone that will say menorah, I'll bless him. Because I'm just saying this again and again and again, but it doesn't stick, so I'm giving
Right.
up.
I
Okay. Yeah.
knew better.
Larry, you were going to say something.
Yes, I thank you. I know better. I stand corrected.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, I wasn't correcting you, Larry. I was
No,
just to bring some, and just a bit of knowledge, that's
Yeah.
all. It wasn't about you. And I would say the 95% of the people call it menorah, especially in the diaspora.
Mhm.
Yep.
How many candles do they light in Israel, Rabbi? Is it the
The
same?
same,
Yeah.
absolutely the same. Yeah, absolutely the same.
Okay.
The only difference, since we are in Hanukkah, that there is, if you remember Rabbi Hillel and Rabbi Shammai, these are 2 rabbis, the Tam of Talmud, that one said white and the other saying what, black. The other and then. And usually the halacha, the law goes by Hillel because he was kinder. He was more lenient. So Shammai said, the first day we light all the candles. And every day we reduce the number to finish. Hillel said, no, we start with 1 and we go until we have it all. So that's a very interesting story.
Very good.
Okay,
Yes,
on
Larry.
Shabbat, we light 2 candles. Hanukkah, the Hanukkah is 8 candles for the Shamas. When is the menorah of the 7 is it ever used in?
Basically, it's not used. It's not used. It's a symbol. And in front of the Knesset, there is a big, big menorah. When they moved the Knesset to another place, they took the menorah. It's in there, and it's the symbol of Medinat Israel is the menorah, not the Star of David. It's the menorah, the menorah.
Yeah.
And yes, and we use it in all kind of ceremonies. But yes, it's a very important symbol of our people.
Very good. Very good. Any other discussion on that? So we, we've had a little side discussion about ingenuity. Does that mean if you are endowed with the ability to do great farming and versus someone else who is endowed with great manufacturing, are they equal or different in wealth? Getting this dovetails back into what Don started with. Any takers on that?
Marty, are you talking biblical times or today?
Anytime. Craftsmanship and manufacturing was usually more important than an agricultural job. You made something that people really needed to allow you to use what agriculture produced. But is that true? Isn't it important also for farmers and ranchers, to be able to provide everything that we need to eat? Or people who own wells to help supply water, which is more valuable? Or is it? Yes, Suzanne.
I think in God's eyes, everything is the same, but in people's eyes, we
Good point. Excellent point.
assign value as society dictates.
Sure. If there's an abundance of water, water's going to be cheap. They're not going to make much money. If there's an abundance of food, the farmers will be richer than some of the other people. But we're not talking, the Torah doesn't address that question the way we're discussing it. It's spiritual. Remember, the Torah is spiritual. It's supposed to say to us in every step of the way, do I have that spark that to do something else that God has implanted in me? Do I have to share more of my wealth with others? Do I have to lift myself up to attain more, to educate myself or to learn a trade or things like that? And there are many reasons why people at the top may come down. People at the bottom have the opportunity to come up, but it's drive. It's an internal drive that we need to protect in each one of us and not let anyone ever take that away from us, because that is what I think is God-given. Okay? When you treat your children poorly, they lose their drive. You treat them, I don't mean putting them up on a pedestal, okay? But if you treat them well, they have a better opportunity of looking at the world in a positive way that they can attain things. So I wish Helene was with us right now, because that would be something that she would be able to address. So I just think that it's very interesting how we define this. And maybe the reason why God is putting different things in the hands of the different tribes, whether they represent something or they do not, but maybe they have a skill that was implanted in them. That's all. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you, Marty. I wanted to mention a book I've been reading, The Painted House by John Grisham. it talks, it's a very, I'm just about a third of the way into it, but it's very descriptive on what the farmers and crops and societal comparisons of the poor and the wealthy, and it's quite interesting. I'm reading two other books at the same time, which I probably shouldn't do, but what the heck. It's too cold to go out in the wind, and I'm enjoying it the best I can.
So, I'm just tossing this out as food for thought. The Torah is dealing with a spiritual approach to all of these things. That's all right. Any other comments? Any other?
I like the idea of the Torah being a living entity for us, and I especially like what you just said, that, it's a way to feed our spirit. It feeds the spirit internally. I get more from this study than I have in many other ever. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all of you.
Thank you.
Now, Marty, you're absolutely right. The issue of spirituality and fairness, Don, is that these things are in the rules, in the laws, like leaving the sides of your farm and not allowing to collect what falls. Those are for the widows and the orphans. So even if you are not very spiritual and you are a nasty guy or girl, the law forces the farmers to take care of you. So those are, if you don't do it because it makes sense, you do it because it's commanded on you.
Right. And so it's just a very interesting approach. I often think that this is sort of like a new approach to what societies heretofore did not have. It's a very in some ways they had a little of this, a little of that, but this is sort of a collection of ideas that seem to make it for a more, if you will, it's more like I hate to use these terms, but more like a democratic republic. We recognize there are people that are of different levels of wealth, but the masses will still have a lot to say and do throughout the whole thing. Everyone is limited. They all have a special talent, but they're limited in their taking over things. It may seem like the Levites are being favored, but only to be priests. Everyone else has been endowed to do something else. A priest without a temple is just like everyone else. So anyway, if Ricky, do you want to read verse 12?
Sure.
Verse 12 to 17.
Yeah, 17 is where we are, right? The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, make a laver of copper and a stand of copper for it for washing, and place it between the tent of meeting and the altar. Put water in it and let Aaron and his sons wash their hands and feet in water drawn from it. When they enter the tent of meeting, they shall wash with water, that they may not die. Or when they approach the altar to serve, to turn into smoke an offering by fire to the Lord, they shall wash their hands and feet, that they may not die. It shall be a law for all time for them, for him and his offspring throughout the ages. So if you don't wash up before, you're gonna die. That doesn't make sense, but that's okay. That's what the Lord said.
Okay. Any Any comments about that?
Yeah, I'm a bit confused. My text did not say at all what Ricky was
That's
saying.
right. I'm glad somebody else noted that.
What,
Ricky, are
I thought
you
we were
on
reading 12 through
Exodus
17.
31, verse 12? Did you start there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what I thought.
31. Wait a minute. I was on 30. Sorry.
Yeah.
See what you did, Don?
Okay, I was getting out my Stone edition to see why they were so different, but okay, just get to the right page and I'll be okay. And the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelite people and say, nevertheless, you must keep my Sabbaths, for this is the time between me and you throughout the ages, that you may know that I, the Lord, have consecrated you. You shall keep the Sabbath, for it is holy for you. He who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his kin. 6 days may work be done, but on the 7th day there shall be a Sabbath of complete rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does work on the Sabbath day shall be put to death. The Israelite people shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout the ages as a covenant for all times. It shall be a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he ceased from work. A little repetition. But that's
It
okay.
is. It is.
Yeah,
Any
yeah.
comments about that?
They really want you to hear it. And they
We've
say it
heard
over-
this innumerable times.
Yeah,
He's
Okay.
reminding us. We're being
Yeah.
reminded.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I like the hand gestures also, Grace. That's right.
Well, I'm fluent in ASL, so I'm not Italian, but I talk with my hands.
No, you did a good job. Any other comments about it? Why is, this is, again, why would God want to have to repeat this so many times? Well, he's obvious. One of the obvious answers is he just finished telling people, be sure to do what I told you to do, but wait, don't do it on the Sabbath. Okay. Why is that? We've spoken about it, and why the Sabbath is a very important concept.
There's probably a lot of rationale behind that, I would imagine, because, the community comes together, perhaps, shares their insight for the week or what they, what they're feeling, what they've been doing. And, that being one, and, it's time for the family to get together and recognize one another and then be grateful for, what God has provided us. And remembrance is of, the Sabbath, and it's a day to just take it easy and rest. If you can't do it on the Sabbath because you're a doctor or there's something more pressing, take another day of the week and at least rest. I've heard rabbis speak that before too. A day of rest, I get to rest a couple of days a week because I'll wear myself out. If God needs to take a rest, then humans should be able to take a rest. That's just my
very good point.
insight. I don't know if I'm not trying
No,
to.
but it's important. It's an important concept. What else happens if you rest?
You're refreshed.
rejuvenated.
Yes, two different words, but it's the same
Yeah.
thing. Yes, and it gives you a chance to come up for air. Okay.
Well, I can attest to that because I said it before this meeting even started, before the study started. If I get a good night's sleep, I've got a good day coming. And if I get a lousy night's sleep, I haven't rested well, my day is, it becomes a 2-nap day.
Yeah. So this is another reason. It's very practical. Yeah, also, what happens to the mind when it has a chance to rest?
Clears out the cobwebs.
Okay,
It
in what way?
recharges. It recharges.
It recharges. You
Yeah.
may suddenly have a new insight in your work, or something else that you read may come to mind. So it's very important. But what else is very important about the Sabbath? We've alluded to it over and over again. Scientifically, when you are at rest and your mind is at rest, you are more attuned to everything else around you. Yes, David.
There is a beautiful science story in chemistry about the discovery of the structure of benzene. And Marty, I think you know that they were worried about it for decades and they couldn't figure it out. And then one of the scientists took a break, went to sleep, and dreamt of little snakes trying to eat their tails. And when he woke up, he said, I got it. It is a ring structure. Benzene is structured as a ring. It's one of the most beautiful stories in all of chemistry, I think.
And we have all had those aha moments when our mind has a chance to rest. Many times we're too absorbed. Why do you, it's the same reason why lawyers require multiple witnesses, because everyone is absorbed in whatever they're doing and something happens and they didn't quite see the entire event from start to finish. Then you try to piece it together because they were so absorbed in what they were otherwise doing. But just before we go to sleep,
Yeah. That's what I was going to
things are fairly quiet in the room, we would hope. And sometimes one of the senses is going to play tricks on us. Your ear hears a sound and your brain suddenly is jostled. Oh, that's a switch, or it's dripping water, or it's someone breathing in the room. Not you, but someone else. Sometimes it's a sudden bit of light. Okay, that because when your eyes are closed, if there's light in the room, it will still be, your eyelids still transmit some of that light. They're sort of translucent. And so it will stimulate for that brief moment. You'll be jarred awake. Same thing with odors and like that. So your senses need that downtime to also rejuvenate. And you'll see the world a little differently when you do that. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Okay, I agree with everyone. Comments beautifully said. I just want to add a couple of things. Now, the Shmirat Shabbat, the taking care of the Shabbat, to remember Shabbat and not to do any, I could speak about that later, any work, is we as our tribes is the first time that the Shabbat notion concept exists among the other people living at those times. We copy a lot of stuff from other tribes, from Hammurabi, the Sumerians, etc., etc. We didn't invent that. But the Shabbat, the stop working for one day, is an innovation that we adopted. The other thing that we can see, the Shabbat is in the Ten Commandments and very high up in priority. So you would say, you know, if you don't keep Shabbat, they're going to kill you. I mean, this doesn't make sense. But it's in there, and we can discuss why it makes sense or not. But when we pray, we say two things. We said like, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. And the second part is, כי ששת ימים עשה Adonai, because 6 days God created the world. So we're talking about creation of the world as a core issue, and Yetziat Mitzrayim, and the leaving of Egypt. These two things, those are events that come up in everything that we say. The Shabbat is one of the covenants that God made with us. There are several covenants. Remember the circumcision, I don't remember what else. But Shabbat is another covenant. And a covenant is something that needs to be respected in a way that, you know, we never stop, not we, you guys, never stop having circumcision. That does not disappear from the world. And the same with Shabbat. And the word Shabbat, not Sabbath, Shabbat means to stop, to stop.
That's right.
Shabbat. That's why another thing that I propose is that we say Shabbat and not Sabbath. Since the non-Jews say Sabbath for Sunday. So Shabbat, and the word Shvita from the same source is strike. When the people strike and don't go to work, it's called, and the same source is to sit. But anyway, so covenant, that we see this, Shabbat is in the 10 Commandments. And if we look at the rest of the commandments, to be killed is for all of them, I think, if I'm not wrong. I think that all, don't kill, don't steal, otherwise you're killed. It doesn't say if you eat shrimps, you are killed. It doesn't say if you eat pork, you're going to be killed. So all those mitzvot are different than certainly Shabbat. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Any other
Yeah,
comments?
Good stuff.
Yes, Larry.
Yeah, we can see the Sabbath referenced here in verse 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So it's not only the importance with repetition, but what about the death threat? We haven't discussed that. And I'd like different points of view on the serious.
That was one of my next questions. Okay, thank you. Let's do that now. What about that? Anybody? I've heard different opinions. So let's see if we can come up with some of them. Yes, Grace.
I believe it. Actually, we talked about this earlier, maybe this year or last year, but doesn't mean they're going to chop your head off and you're going to die in that sense, but you'll be ostracized from the community for not adhering to, these requests of God.
Okay. Yes, Don. Very good, Grace.
Rabbi Mary, in the Hebrew, how is that, what sense is put to death? Just listening to what Grace asked.
On the 12th, verse 12, and you kept the Shabbat because it's holy, and those that break the Shabbat, mot yumat, is going to be killed. And everyone that does certain works, they are going to be cut from the people, as Great said. But the death absolutely appears there.
Okay. In my midweek studies, I suddenly realized that adherence to these laws can only be supported at the 1st or 2nd century BCE within Jewish settlements. So in the intervening, from this time, the intervening 1,000+ years to the 1st and 2nd centuries, the records indicate that nobody was observing these laws, that, that the skeletons of fish without scales were found in the garbage dumps. And there's no evidence that until, I guess, Ezra came along, that anybody was really observing these laws. So there was,
Yeah.
it's pretty relatively recent. I mean, I realize it's 2,000 years ago, but that's pretty recent compared to when these laws were issued. I'm just wondering whether they were just ignored, or maybe the actual writing of the Torah was that much later. I don't know, I'm rambling again.
Yeah, it was much later. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt. I mean, in my mind, in Friedman life, in many scholars, the rabbis from Orthodox congregations will say, yeah, it was written there, and the finger of God wrote it, and the finger of Moses, and the finger of whatever. But scholars of Bible, of Torah, will question if these things were written at the time that we're talking about. And I'm going to emphasize, for scholars, and for Miri, who's not a scholar, but respect that, this is not a history book. And when we say that person is going to be killed, I think it's, we can say in a matter of, and in the same sentence is that he's going to be cut off from the community. So we said, okay, cut off of the community, but not killed. Yeah, and the rabbis explain many of these things. There is a time of judges. Aren't you going to put a person to be judged before you kill him? Who kills? Who's going to be put to death? Who's going to chop the head, or who's going to decide to do it? We don't have an answer here.
That's right. Yes, Larry. Very
If we
good.
go
Very
back
good.
early in Genesis to 2:17, you may not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You are not to eat from it, for on that day you must die. So, I mean, we've had threats before, and this was not carried out.
Well, the tree of knowledge, you are missing a sentence, Larry. If you read it, do you have it in front of you?
Well, I just did. Sure.
If you eat from the tree, read that one.
Okay, I'll start with 16. God commanded concerning the human, saying, from every other tree of the garden you may eat, yes, eat. But from the tree of the knowing of good and evil, you are not to eat from it. For in that day...
Okay, so which tree it doesn't let us eat from?
The tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Ah, that's the one that we always don't quote. That's the one that we need to do. And in the case of Shabbat, it would be if you don't follow it, you know that you have to follow because you ate from that tree. That's why that sentence is so crucial and so beautiful. You'll have a conscience to know what's right and what's wrong. So, yeah, God can kill, and if you believe it, every person around us that dies, it's God doing, unless it was murder, okay?
Yes, Don?
But thank you for that, bringing that up, Larry, because I've always wondered that too. It's like, since then, we've all been waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know? Um, we're still alive, even though in that day that was supposed to be the end, but it wasn't. And so now, since that time, everything we read in the Torah is looked at through a moral lens, our behavior ever since then has been the subject of the Torah and how to control it.
Yeah.
And that's why this particular section of Exodus really interests me so much, because in Israel now, there's these tremendous studies in genetic engineering going on. And it's kind of scary because although the Torah is supposed to help us govern our bad impulses and, control ourselves, we got a bunch of scientists in Israel now trying to do it with genes, physically. And I haven't seen anybody write on this intersection between the moral jurisdiction of the Torah and intervention of the people with CRISPR machines who are going to change our behavior genetically. I don't know if anybody else has come across that, but we're kind of at a really interesting point in history right now.
Yeah, and that
yeah.
relates to the concept that we have and we use all the time, mainly with kids, and Elaine would have, I think, agree, is freedom of choice.
Yes.
Because you can choose this or you can choose that. That's the moral.
Very good. Very good.
Free will.
Yes, Suzanne. And then I think Grace is trying to raise her hand too, but go ahead, Suzanne.
In response to Don's comment about the genetics, there is well, I don't want to say it's the Christian community. Let's just say among some followers that study prophecy is very concerned about that kind of thing, because Jesus says that during or said rather, that during the end times, it'll be like the days of Noah. And to myself and some others, the days of Noah were when the watchers were fooling around with human genetics. And one of the things in the book of Revelation says that if you take the mark of the beast, who is the Antichrist, there's God will forgive anything, but there's no going back once that happens. So there are those who are of the opinion that has something to do with genetics. And recently I heard someone give a talk, and I meant to get the reference before I came to class, but I haven't, but I will get it. And I believe it was somebody in Israel at one of the universities discovered that in our DNA, there's like a little bridge that connects the strands, if you can picture the strands. And the space thing is in a number sequence that if you look at the numbers, the Hebrew letters that correspond to that number, it spells Yahweh. So I thought that was really cool that God has his name stamped on every single cell in our bodies. And this also gives credence to the idea that if our genetics are fooled with and somehow this sequence is altered, then we will no longer have his name with us or in us. And yeah, I guess that's how I want to end it.
Okay. It's a very interesting
Interesting.
comment.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I saw some hands go up. Don and Rabbi Mary.
Yeah, still on that theme. Darwin gave us the idea of natural selection, but since Darwin, with modern medicine, Dr. Cohen, people who would have been selected out by natural diseases and other things are no longer selected out. And at the same time, the fertility rate is so low that there aren't enough children being born now to sustain the human race. So we are Israel has one of the lowest birth rates in the world. And so we are kind of engineering our way out of existence and selecting out people who, I can't possibly judge who should be selected out, who shouldn't, but it's distorted Darwin's original proposal for natural selection.
Okay. These are very interesting ideas. And
Larry.
Larry and then Rabbi Mary.
You said we are not having enough population. We just hit 8 billion people.
Doesn't matter. We are
And
not
I
self-sustaining.
think there is a bigger problem with the future of this planet with overpopulation than decreased population.
No, not in the countries I mentioned, not in the United States, not in Israel, not in Western Europe. Asian countries.
Okay, so the other Asia, Africa can take over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant about not a natural selection. We are engineering our way into a different situation.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
Rabbi
instead
Mary.
of natural, what's going on now is more brainish. The brain says, I want to finish my PhD, so I don't want a kid now. I cannot pay for another college for more than one kid. So I think that the thinking is different, and it doesn't go to the nature of us and as animals to follow the first commandment of the Torah. The first one.
Go forth and
multiply. Multiply. But now I need to remember what I wanted to say. Okay. In the Torah, we have Jacob working for Laban, for Laban. Remember that? He wouldn't give, you have to work 7 years and then another 7 years. And what Jacob does, he does a genetic twist on the sheep that they have. He multiplied the good ones and not the bad ones. And therefore, at the end of his work, he has a double number of very, very healthy sheep. It's interesting if you go to read that. It's every time I read that, I say genetics. I mean, he knew how to do it. He knew how to cross this with this and get what he wanted. And it's quite amazing. It's quite amazing that someone who wrote that, let's say that someone wrote it later on, even the later on knew about that. And at the end of the 14 years, the work, he has so many animals. And Laban said, oh, you cannot take them all because you cross them with mine, you know, that kind of say. But it's there. Just go and read that because it's simply fascinating.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think this was an interesting discussion. There are several uses of the word death, the death of something. And sometimes it implies that something is going to start its way towards a final death. Not necessarily immediate death, but something will happen to you that will make you think differently, which can lead to your ultimate demise or whatever. And this is something that we always have to be on guard for. Many times we see the immediate benefits of things, and we say, oh, this is the right path to follow. And then we suddenly realize several generations later, this was not necessarily the best choice. And we have to go back and rethink this whole idea. And this is human nature. We tend to see what is going to benefit us in our generation and possibly our children's generation, but not necessarily think of how it's going to affect others, other people, and their thoughts. And I think that that can be the start of a death process of changing from one thing that you hold most dear and sacred now, and years later find that you have run into problems. You can take things, another way of looking at it is you can take things too far, too soon. That the goal is being to achieve the goal is too soon. Maybe it has to take more time so that fewer people do not suffer in the long haul. We don't know. We can't answer it. We can't see into the future. Likewise, the opposite may hold true. We may suddenly say, oh, this is great and everyone has to change, and it works out. There's a little bit of chance involved in that. And in whether it's going to be totally successful or not. Is it going to be used for bad or good? Nobel was asked to develop dynamite. Okay, its first use was military. It was not for the good, finding better ways to do it. That's why the Nobel Prize was created. He regretted coming up with the concept of dynamite. And so there's more to this that meets the eye. You know, where does this lead? Look at what happened when we created the atomic bomb. But also look at all the other side benefits medically that we also know of today. The subject of genetics was raised. When we eliminate a gene that appears to be detrimental to the population, okay, or a family, and we then say, well, okay, they're going to survive to an earlier age, but that's an extra mouth to feed. And have we developed everything to be able to accomplish that? And to be able to say that the unborn who is now going to live a normal life expectancy and breed other children, they may still have some other process that we couldn't imagine that could lead to the demise of the human race. as Dawn is pointing out, we do not have enough information. And this happens in everything we do. The trick is, and we try to do this every week, bring into the discussion as many different ideas and opinions, books that people have read, other fields of knowledge and like that. And somewhere when you put it all together, it may spark a new idea. But that new idea can also lead to the demise of your thinking about something else. Think about how many times in your life you have come up with new ideas and have forgotten what you did before. It's very common, very common. And so it is, it happens to everyone. You can't change, but that's a death of that old idea or that old way of doing it. And that could also imply here that God is concerned that if you take that one step away from not doing something that I'm telling you to do, it's going to take you one more step away from what I'm telling you will give you an enriched life, a full life. And maybe that's what is meant by this. Later on, we're going to read it from another perspective. Do not add or subtract what I've told you. We're also going to hear the words, build a wall around this and protect it. We're going to, that's how valuable all of this is. So when we come up with a new idea, it doesn't mean that it's going to be forever. It may be short-lived, it may be long-lived, but reality says it ain't going to be there forever. Something new will come up, and somebody else will come up with another idea to try. So I think, so it is another way of looking at this concept of death. It isn't necessarily a physical death. And that's all I want to say. That's my opinion and what I use to justify that. That this is more of a spiritual death. And if something that's spiritual is giving you the information, what does that imply? Maybe God fears that he would no longer exist in your mind. The further you stray, that can be the ultimate. And maybe it's a defensive movement by God, it's a statement by God. Keep me alive, to keep God alive.
One thing I'd like to pick up on what you just said, Marty,
Please.
about the wall. I have a couple of drawings here of the temple, and one, of course, is the Herod's temple in Jerusalem with the magnificent wall surrounding it. But the other one is the original temple that was built portably. And that also has a wall. It was designed so that it could be picked up and carried along. And I wanted to pick up on that a little bit because there is a wall, but there is a gate in the wall so that anybody could come in. And it would be controlled entrance all the way back to Exodus. And I just wanted to point that out.
Interesting point. Interesting point. So what are we exercising? Grace just said it. Check your chat. That's it.
Imagination, yeah.
That's right. It is the most one of the most valuable gifts man has been given. Yes, Larry.
We also have a metaphysical wall, a wall around the Torah.
Yes. Yes. So it is, you see this whole concept, you can even say that physically we have a wall around our brain, the cranium. Maybe the brain is trying to tell us something. Save me. Protect me. And so there's a physical way and there's also a spiritual way. And maybe we have to have a combination of both. I'll build build a temple. We're going to have all these laws. And yeah, that's a physical, very physical way, but a spiritual, maybe we need that day of rest to allow the spiritual ideas to come to make us aware of those spiritual ideas. Okay. Because that's really the climax. What we just discussed is the climax of all of these laws, in this part of the story. And then verse 18 is the anticlimax. Okay, if somebody would care to read just verse 18.
Well, I could read it. And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of speaking with him upon Mount Sinai, the 2 tables of the testimony, tables of some stone, written with the finger of God.
So most of us have tablets, and this is a very important concept. That this has been a very laborious task. God is not only saying this, he's writing it down on these 2 tablets. And how many days is it taking to get to this point? 40. That's right. And so it's been a huge task. And so and just think about how long it's taken us just to get through this portion of discussing all the laws. That, and this is only the beginning. And you can imagine what's going through Moses' head. Oy, what have I gotten myself into?
What do you mean?
And then, let alone the people. This is not going to be an easy task. So what else have we learned during this time period? Let's shift gears for a second before we get into the next part, the next story in Torah. What are the things we have learned about so far about Moses, the elders, the wisdom of distribution of labor, the wisdom of recognizing people for what they can do and honoring them, keeping each one maintaining that each one, no matter what they do, is very important for the community. What other ideas come to mind? Yes, Don.
Well, what I've learned is that in the space of the 40 years since the Exodus from Egypt, we've witnessed the formation of a society, of the model for our Hebrew society. And it's the who does what our actions should be based on, what our legal system is, what our distribution of wealth will be, all the basic factors in putting together a society, and which was it's kind of recapitulated in the formation of Israel. I mean, in some ways, Jews had to go through the same thing again because there hadn't been a Jewish state for over 2,000 years. So what I'm learning is how that model came to be.
Very
Yes.
good points. Very good
Mhm.
points. Yeah. Okay. David, I'm going to give you the floor. And Grace, were you going to add something? I know Rabbi Mary also had her hand up.
I put it in the
Okay.
chat.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes, David.
Okay, I was gonna, first of all, agree with Anita. And bringing back to Hillary Clinton's book, It Takes a Village, is so important. But the thing I was thinking of, again, and I've mentioned this so many times before, is the personal relationship that God had with Moses. Doesn't have that with anybody. He knows everybody because we've just read that he talks to people and asks people to do things by name. But it's that personal relationship that I believe is the underlying key. God lives in each one of us and is able to have that personal relationship, I think, with each one of us.
Excellent point. Maybe that's why we also need a Sabbath to refresh that. It's also said in Torah, speak to them in a very still, small voice. Maybe that's the voice we really want to hear. Okay, what you just said, David. And it takes the Sabbath to put us into that frame of mind. Excellent, excellent point. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
I just want to follow on what Dan said, the creation of a nation of people. And there is no differentiation between the tribes. Everyone is the nation that needs to obey there. It's the federal law. It's not the county and it's not the city. It's the federal law that's above, underneath the God, but it's for everyone.
Very good point. Very good point. Any other ideas about what we have been reading for the past year? Okay, we've been covering on more as if we go through the first part of Exodus. Yes. Yes, Larry.
Okay, I think every people group, they need a creation story, something
Mhm.
called creation myth. Every society we know of has this. And then they need a common rules of governance. And the Torah provides this, moral authority, but also some legalistic underpinnings of how to conduct
Yes.
daily life.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Excellent. Well stated. Any other comments? I think, Suzanne, I think your cat has a comment. It keeps raising its tail since it can't raise its paw.
Oh, she's driving me crazy and you keep.
Well, she wants your
With her tail.
attention, obviously.
I'm petting her. And I'm brushing her and oh, she's the PETA cat, and that stands for pain in the ass.
But there's something
Aw.
we've left out of the equation. Is the Sabbath just for us and the people living amongst us? What else?
I think
Rabbi
it's for
Mary, you're
everyone.
shaking your head. Oh, well,
It's for
yes, please, go
everyone.
ahead. It's for everyone.
Yeah, it's for all. It's all inclusive. It's like, it's again to maybe unify us, no matter what our walk of life or faith or religiosity we want to follow, but maybe to unify us as a people, as a human to human, or human to dog, or human to cat, whatever.
Yeah.
I just, that's my thought.
It's for your animals
Yeah,
too.
it includes the slaves, it includes
Mhm.
the maids, and it includes the animals.
Yes,
So as you said, everyone, it's everyone.
that's right. So it's more than just us looking at it from an anthropomorphic, point of view. It's for everything, every animal. Plants are going to continue to grow no matter whether you reap them on the Sabbath or not, but they'll have a better chance if you
Yeah,
don't
but
touch.
you have to milk the cow on the Sabbath.
Yes, there are
Yeah,
certain
but you don't
exceptions.
have to
Yes.
walk it. You don't have to have the cow and her husband to pull the cart. That's the issue.
No, I
Mhm.
understand.
You have to feed them as well.
Yeah, there are certain things that you have to do so that the animal is protected or helped. Yes, Larry.
When you asked the question about who the Ten Commandments were for, basically it reminded me, well, particularly honoring the Sabbath, taking a day of rest. Do you remember the book, The Gifts of the Jews by Thomas Cahill?
We've
Oh, God,
discussed
long
that at
time
some
ago.
point. Yes.
Subtitle is How a Tribe of Desert Nomads Changed the Way Everyone Thinks and Feels. And in this, he discusses the spread of the concept, particularly honoring the Sabbath or taking a day of rest,
Yes.
whether you choose our Sabbath or another kind of Sabbath.
It's just a fascinating thing. Thank you for that bit of information. I think it's a good read.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my opinion about it. I think it's a good read for that purpose. Any other comments? Well, at this time, I'm going to stop here intentionally rather than opening up the story of the golden calf. I think that would be a worthwhile one session, or it may take 2 or 3. It depends on how many. But I think this is a good place to stop. So, any announcements? Well,
What's this
Torah
week?
Study will meet again next week. I know that.
Hanukkah party is Tuesday night. We will not walk the labyrinth. We will not have the New Year's Day party, which was scheduled for the first Sunday of the month. So the bagel breakfast is going to be the second Sunday of the month in January. But I'm not moving it back to the first, even though the New Year's Day thing was canceled.
That's fair. That's fair.
You know, I moved it once. I ain't moving it again.
You don't blame you.
Let's see, what else has been canceled? It seems like as fast as things were, you know, we sent out, oh, the Shabbaton. You
Yes.
guys are going to be the first to hear the final numbers because I just got them together last night and Stacy is making a flyer, but where are the, okay, we do a Shabbaton. It's going to be the last weekend of March, maximum 20 people. Rabbi will be leading it. And it's a retreat for those who've never, you know, they didn't do a Shabbaton when they were a teenager.
Mhm.
And it's going to be in Aho, and it will cost for a person taking a single room for the whole weekend, $150, and for people taking the double room, you know, a couple would be $650. So it works out to be $325 a person. The difference being, you know, they still have to eat. So I mean, literally yesterday got the numbers to pull together the final. We looked so forward to it last year, but then COVID, no, was it last year or 2 years ago? 2 years ago, yeah, because COVID hit. And it's like, she really kept the room rate down to like last year's rate, but the food, which is catered, we couldn't, you know, we got to pay for the food. So anybody, it's going to be, well, like I said, the last weekend of March, I don't remember the exact dates. So that's, you'll be seeing a flyer. We're going to have the flyers for the Hanukkah party, but all reservations really need to be done by the end of January, if they really want a room count by February 1st, although I'm sure I could stretch that a little. So That's to me the exciting news, because that's the exciting piece on my,
That sounds
plate.
good.
Yeah,
Any
I-
other announcements? Yes, Grace, and David, yes.
My plans are to be in Green Valley
yes.
by the 20th of
of
January.
And she's gonna live right next door to me, because I have room.
Very nice, very nice.
I
Very-
am looking for some assistance, but I think I found it locally to drive with me from here to there with
Okay.
a stopover in Albuquerque for the night, because I don't want to make 1,000-mile drive alone, one, and two, it's too much to drive. I don't know what the weather, pending the weather, if we've had snow and ice and rain, I'm gonna sit put until it's safe. But that's the goal, you know, if
Yeah.
I'd like to fly somebody in from there and drive with me that's familiar with that type of weather driving. Oh, she
Okay,
waved and left. Thank you, Mary.
thank
Thank
you,
you,
Rabbi
Rabbi.
Mary.
Okay, David,
Okay, David.
Okay. I have an announcement I'd like to share with everyone. Today is the 57th anniversary of the first time I took out a telescope and searched for comets. On December the 17th, 1965, I began my search for comets, which goes on till this day, and which has been successful, very successful, 23 times. To celebrate it, to celebrate this, I began this morning by sharing this wonderful Torah study with all of you. This afternoon, I will be doing a book signing for my new children's book at Starizona. Here is the book. It's taken a couple of years for me to write it. And it's about a magic beagle who takes a group of children throughout the universe. It's very short, and the signing will be this afternoon from 2:00 until 5:00 at the Starizona store on North Oracle. Anyway, I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to tell
Oh,
everybody.
that's wonderful.
That
Very
is
nice.
wonderful, yes.
Yeah.
Congratulations for finishing a book.
Thank you.
What's the name of it?
The name of it is Clipper, Cosmos, and Children, Finding the Eureka Moment. And the book is for sale for about $20. And if you get it at Starizona, there's no shipping, so $20 is the
That's right.
Nice.
But
Nice.
it is a
That's
very
wonderful.
good book. You'll find humor in it. It's great for kids as well as parents. I'll put
Yeah.
a plug in for it, David.
Well, thanks, and thanks for your help, Marty.
In 2 weeks, I will not be here. So next week I will be able to conduct, everything, and but in 2 weeks we will need a volunteer to step forward to act as leader. And think about it. And if one of you would be happy, maybe Rabbi Mary, I'll announce it again next week. Maybe she will be here. If she is, maybe she will lead the group and everything, so that there's some continuity. And then
Rabbi
I will
might
be
be
back
back by
the
then.
following.
Rabbi Norm might be back by then. It's close. When is he?
It's close.
Yeah.
It's only because I have family that's going to be here, and it's going to be a madhouse. So
Well, enjoy the family.
Yeah. And I want to wish everyone a very healthy week. And I will see you all next Saturday. Larry, I hope you're able to be with us next Saturday too. Okay.